So this is another approach for sentence embedding, and this is in this article in 2022. It uses these validation measures such as alignment and uniformity, and instead of just working in Euclidean space, we work on a hypersphere, so that we could use, if you use cosine similarity, is much more useful in order to do all of these embeddings. So this paper uses these alignment and uniformity measures for a better representation, because we have problem of collapse, because we either collapse to a point on a hypersphere, for example, or we collapse into just a small subspace. Instead of the whole space, we collapse to, and this is called dimensional collapse. But this paper outperforms this idea in 2018. So the paper presents simCSE, a simple contrastive learning framework that greatly advances state-of-the-art sentence embedding. So they first describe an unsupervised approach which takes an input sentence and predicts itself in a contrastive objective, with only standard dropout used as noise. This simple method works surprisingly well, performing on par with previous supervised counterparts. We find that dropout acts as a minimal data augmentation, and removing it leads to representation collapse. And then they propose a supervised approach which incorporates annotated pairs from natural language inference dataset into our contrastive learning framework by using entailment pairs as positive and contradiction pairs as hard negatives. So we pass the same sentence to the pre-trained encoder twice. By applying the standard dropout twice, we can obtain two different embeddings, a positive pairs, and then we take the other sentence in the same mini batch as negative, and the model predicts the positive one among the negatives. So this supervised simCSE builds upon the recent successes of natural language inference datasets and incorporates annotated sentence pairs in contrastive learning. Unlike previous works that cast in a three-way classification, you have either entailment, neutral, or contradiction, they leverage the fact that entailment pairs can be naturally used as positive instances. They also find that adding corresponding contradiction pairs as hard negative further improves performance. And for unsupervised, they just use so the negative instance is obvious. Anything else, it could be negative, but the positive instance is interesting because you can just use some dropout, and it's the same sentence, still the same kind of sentence, but you drop some of them, some of the tokens, and again it could be seen as a positive sample. And we can also use this natural language inference dataset for the supervised case. So I will explain this paper aligned and uniform in a different video, but the alignment vector could be seen as the points we want them to be very close to each other and the hypersphere if they're positive, if they're related. For example, the augmentation of an image with itself could be positive samples. And on the other hand, in the hypersphere, we want to distribute it uniformly. We don't want to concentrate on one particular area. We want to distribute it along all parts of different spaces. So the idea of unsupervised simCSE is extremely simple. We just take a collection of sentences, and the key ingredient is to work with identical positive pairs is through the use of independently sampled dropout masks. And we use H where Z is just a random mask for the dropout, and we simply feed the same input to the encoder twice and get two embeddings with different dropout mask. And the training objective of simCSE is this for mini batch n, because we have n sentences, and now S and Z is just the standard dropout mask in transformers, and we do not add any additional dropouts. So two positive pairs embedding of the same sentence using two different dropouts. So by different dropouts you can get positive pairs freely without any label things. So this is why these unsupervised approaches could be done in practice. So you can use dropout noise as data, because in computer vision we use data augmentation, transformation, rotation, but in here we can just ignore some of the tokens in the sentence and it still is a positive sample. And so we have two measures, uniformity and alignment, and so you see we lose one of them and we get the other one. So each direction we could enhance one measure but decrease the importance of the other measure. So it's a trade-off between these two things. And for supervised, as I said, we can use NLI dataset which sentences are either entailment of each other, or each sentence could be neutral to each other, each sentence could be contradict another sentence. This is for the supervised case that I explained. And the hard negatives, those contradictions that naturally occurs are the hard negative. And then we can train using this loss. And it has connection to anisotropy, because for example in BERT base you're just localizing your point in the feature space. You're just localizing in some particular region. You're not capturing all places. So it's a kind of local anisotropy, and it is a kind of collapse, because we either collapse to just one point on the hypersphere, if you normalize your vector, or you either collapse to a hyperplane, just a subspace in the whole space. So in either cases, it's a kind of collapse, but this is a weak collapse, because at least you can distinguish between different points, although you haven't captured different areas. So anisotropy, it means that you are just focusing on a particular region of space, and we want this one because we want to distribute all points on the hypersphere, but the points that are similar to each other, we want them to be as close as possible. So this is closer. So even to Roberta base, there is a kind of anisotropy. If you look at this, it's like a cone. And if the number of layers increases, you see that the average cosine similarity increases. But for the BERT base, for the Roberta base, it increases even more. So a simple way to alleviate this problem is post-processing, either to eliminate the dominant principal components or to map embeddings to an isotropic distribution. Another common solution is to add regularization during training. So it's naturally connected to uniformity, both highlighted in that embeddings should be evenly distributed in space. So following Wong, the asymptotics of contrastive learning objective can be expressed by the following expression, where the number of negative samples, negative instances, approaches infinity. And W is the sentence embedding matrix corresponding to X sub I. The ith row of W is H sub I. So this one essentially minimizes an upper bound of the summation of elements of W transpose. Since we normalize S sub I, all elements on the diagonal of W transpose are 1, and then the trace is just a constant. So we start from pre-trained checkpoints of Bert or even Roberta, and take the CLS token representation as a sentence embedding, and we train unsupervised simCSE on some randomly sample sentences from Wikipedia. And simCSE is not sensitive to batch sizes.